you're in the right place. This is the Eatfluencer Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Maggie Landes. Together, we are going to unpack everything about eating and discover the what, when, and how that will let you lead your best life. This is not your doctor's conversation about nutrition. Today is when you can start to love eating again. Let food be food and you be you. Get ready to get eatfluenced. Well, welcome back, everybody. This is Maggie, your host of the Eatfluencer Podcast. If you are joining me for the first time, I'm so thrilled you're here to participate in this anti-diet conversation. And if you're a returning listener, I do so deeply appreciate your support, both for my podcast and also for my message, because I consider myself on a mission to help women just get out of their own way, fix this constant food overwhelm and obsession with weight loss and dieting, this chronic yo-yo dieting roller coaster, just to get out of that cycle so that they can go about their life doing the things they want to do with a high quality, healthy, just environment that they can thrive in and think outside the box. I'm just want to help women get out of this space where everything is rigid, everything is limited, and everything is restricted. So today, what we're going to talk about, this is episode 26. I've titled it Dealing with the Guilt of Dieting and the Shame in Stopping. And this is something that it sort of underpins all the conversations I have with women when they're first getting started in their exit from diet culture, as you want to call it, is this guilt that they were there in the first place, and this reflection of shame as to who they are for having participated in it. And I want to address this because it's not something that is often the first thing people verbalize to me, but it really colors and flavors the mindset work that they're doing. And it's important that we address it and sort of not let it just sit there like the big elephant in the living room. So we're going to talk a lot about sort of the language of guilt and shame and diet culture in this episode. And this is, of course, just, my brief sort of version of it. I'm not a psychologist or anything like that, but I feel knowledgeable enough to at least bring an awareness to these issues, because they do keep a lot of people stuck right at the beginning when they, decide they want to stop dieting, and then they feel this guilt and shame and kind of can't move past that. So I want to help with that. And that's the purpose of today's episode. I have to say that first, guilt, the word guilt is yet another word that diet culture has totally hijacked. I mean, guilt means that you've done something wrong, that there's, you're guilty of breaking the law or guilty of violating something. Like there's, it's a negative word, but diet culture has now, taken that and put that on labels with food and with eating and with food choices. And that really is the entire premise of diet culture, is this idea of external control, that I'm doing air quotes, diet culture, whoever that is. I mean, it's coming from a million places, but that the diet culture knows better than you, knows better than your body, and that, quote, they have all the answers, and they get to decide what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, what is going to serve you, and then it goes a step beyond that, because the diet culture, fantasy police, determine how you should feel about it, and that how your character is actually defined by your food choices. So, when you see on a packaging that it says guilt-free cookies or, guilt-free dessert or something, there's no guilt. Guilt is not an ingredient on the ingredient label. So diet culture has put that there. When they describe food about, ooh, what's your guilty pleasure in eating? Is your guilty pleasure chocolate, or, do you have a guilty sweet tooth? There's a lot of guilt in overeating. And we use that language. I feel so bad. I'm so guilty. I ate all the, leftovers or whatever. We've used this word, which is a word from psychology, and, sort of fossilized it into this diet culture vernacular. And it's totally out of place to put it there. And I hate it. Food is neutral. The actual food items are neutral. Your food choices are neutral. All right? Richard Nixon was guilty. The Unabomber is guilty. You're just eating French fries. It's just a thing. You're not any more, guilty for eating a cookie or a French fry or 3 baskets of chips or a block of cream cheese or whatever. It's not a law. There's not a rule book except the one that diet culture has made you believe there is. And, eating something is not criminal, but it's been contorted into this lens of really just punishing. Like, we deserve punishment for making food choices, and who's making the rules and who's doing the punishing. The diet culture rules are totally arbitrary, totally bogus, totally made up. The food police is this idea of, like, those are the enforcers of diet culture, that we've got these, they're in our head. It's not real people. It's like in our head, this idea that every eating decision we make is labeled as good or bad, or endorsed or revoked, or, we're guilty or not guilty. And it's all made up. It's all what we have gotten the impression is reality, but it's actually just this diet culture thinking. And so you're not guilty of choosing any food. You have autonomy of choice. And, when I say foods are all equal, they're equal in morality. I'm not saying, nobody is saying that there's no difference between an Oreo and a piece of asparagus. Like, nobody's ever said that. That's not what I said. That's not what the intuitive eating dietitians that wrote the book said. We're just saying that food is a neutral thing, and you use it as a tool to get towards or further away from your health goals. And when I say your health goals, I mean your, with a capital Y, your health goals, not the goals that some bogus, made up, arbitrary diet culture food police gave you. So just to know that, choosing your food doesn't mean anything about you. Diet culture makes you feel guilty for just simply eating. But just simply eating is a, inborn right of being a human. You're not guilty for enjoying food. You're not guilty for being hungry. But here's where it gets kind of complicated, because one of the obstacles I find is when I work with people and speak to people, they start to really get this idea, like, okay, I'm starting to see diet culture, because you have to kind of pull back from it to see it. It's one of those things where we are, really just covered in it. We are like just drowning in it. We are surrounded by it. We are totally and completely immersed in it that we don't even see it. And there's like this awakening period as you sort of pull away from it and you start realizing that diet culture is not you, and it is not required of you. But as you're seeing this, there's this guilt of eating and this guilt of loving food and this guilt of hunger that diet culture has beat into you sort of changes and transforms itself into, you feel guilty that you participated for so long, that you spent so many years of your life, decades of your life, dollars, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars on diet products, diet plans, procedures, supplements, this, that, the other, this energy that we have just poured into the mission of shrinking our bodies, pursuing weight loss, all this obsession with food, how it's distracted us and stolen our time, stolen our money, stolen our energy, that makes us feel guilty. So it's sort of like a lose-lose. You're guilty for participating, you're guilty for wanting to leave, but we can use guilt as a point in time to reflect, realign our values and our priorities, and sort of redirect where we want to pour all of those personal resources of time and energy and emotional bandwidth. What we don't want to happen is for all that guilt to turn into shame. And here's a really important distinction that is really, if it's not something that you've heard just outright explained, I think it's worth stopping for a moment here to do that. And this is from, I've done a lot of reading from Brene Brown, Dr. Brene Brown, who is a researcher, really. I guess she defines herself as a shame researcher. This is like her entire sort of educational pedigree, is studying the psychology and the neurobiology of these things and that sort of, sphere of study. But the difference, really, the way she says it, I think is best, is that guilt stems from action, and even actions that you may not even execute, but actions that you think about or consider taking. And guilt is this responsibility or remorse for either doing or thinking of doing it. Okay. Now, shame is when, it's like guilt, except for it is personal. It's who you are. It's how those actions or thoughts define you and what that defined you looks like to other people. So it's, Dr. Brene Brown defines it as this experience of believing that we are flawed somehow, and that something that we've done, failed to do, thought about doing, experienced makes us unworthy. And she really feels strongly that guilt can actually be helpful, that the action step is really, like I said, a point where you can make adaptations, where you can approach it with curiosity, where you can sort of motivate change, whereas shame is kind of over the line. Shame is not helpful. Shame is not productive. It ends up really destroying our ability to make progress and move forward to whatever, solution we're kind of getting towards. And so that's really important, really, really important. So like, here's some examples of ways that you may feel guilt when you're coming out of diet culture. All right. And I'm saying this from personal experience. I'm saying this from the experience I have hearing from many, 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 many dozens and hundreds of women who have done this and are in their 40s, 50s, 60s and have dieted and participated in diet culture for literally decades. So you may feel like you've, quote, wasted the best years of your life, and you've, sort of burned through your younger adulthood focusing on weight loss, focusing on diet culture, and focusing on all these things that you now realize may not have been of great value to you. You may have even damaged your health with diet behaviors or your food choices or your, disordered eating. Even you may even be recovering or in recovery from an eating disorder. You may be a health professional, and this is where I feel guilty, is I spent, 19 years being a doctor and promoting, weight loss diets and advocating for reducing your BMI and all these things that really, now that I've studied in more detail, are not meaningful and not the definition of health, and certainly not motivating to patients. You may be guilty of wanting to shrink your body and feeling like smaller is better, and preferring that in yourself, and doing whatever was required and giving up whatever was required to pursue that goal. You may be guilty if you held a belief system, or if you hold a belief system where you judge others because of what they eat or how they looked, or, what size and shape their body is. You may believe that meant something about them, and you may have chosen relationships or friendships, or not chosen relationships and friendships, just simply because you were judging somebody's body size, and sort of superimposed a meaning to their food choices. You may be feeling guilty that you missed out on a lot of important moments in your life. If you had disordered eating and you avoided going to events, and you weren't social, and you didn't, participate in the things you wanted to do. You didn't get in the pictures with your kids. You didn't put on the swimsuit at the beach, because you had body image issues and confidence issues. You may feel guilty that you really were not knowledgeable about real health promoting behaviors, and you didn't pursue actually improving your mental, physical, emotional health because you were so focused on weight loss. That's okay. All those things. And this is just a little list. I mean, I could go on. There's, of course, you can add your own thoughts to that, but there's a lot of guilt involved in dieting and diet culture. And when we are conditioned to have a guilty conscience and a sort of guilt reflex in diet culture, it's going to be like that too as we exit diet culture, until we can work through that. And so don't feel bad about having those thoughts or being guilty of those actions or thoughts. The problem is we don't want shame to seep in, because like Brene Brown says, that is not productive. That is not a place where reflection and redirection leads to change. That's a place where things can spiral out of control and go south real quickly. So, here's how you've stepped over that line into shame, is that you are a terrible person for doing all those things, thinking all those things, participating or not participating in all those things. Okay, you don't think you have self-confidence. You don't have the ability to be any different. If you were a good person, you wouldn't have ever felt it necessary to do those things. You must be dumb and gullible for falling into this diet culture trap. You have relationships that are superficial because they were based on, really a diet culture connection, and you don't deserve connectedness like that. Okay, that's shame. When you start talking about the person and the character and the morality, that is shame. And that's where we need to stop. And if you're having thoughts like that, you really do need to get some additional help with a mental health professional, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a social worker, somebody, a therapist who can work through some of those things to get you out of that mindset, because it will be very challenging to make changes when you're in a shame cycle. Now, guilt, we can deal with guilt, all right? Well, guilt is about learning and about really being honest with ourselves and looking through our choices, our history, sort of our current placement in this culture with a lens of curiosity and adaptation. Now that is healthy. That is productive. And what you need to really understand is that all of this is not your fault. Your reality is truly just composed of what you're exposed to and what you're led to believe about it. And you've been exposed to diet culture. And guess what? Diet culture has led you to believe that this is true. And they've brought all their BFFs to the party. And so you're hearing it from the food industry. You're seeing it in the policies, in the public policies. You're hearing it in the healthcare system, in the fashion industry, in the media, entertainment. I mean, it's everywhere. It's not your fault that you've been exposed to this and been led to believe it's true. This has been our reality. So in a lot of regards, you didn't even know you were in this. It was involuntary. It was reflexive. It's just been normative culture for as long as we have been alive. But here's the good thing. You can change. That's the beautiful thing about life is you have permission to change at any point. You can start something. You can stop something for any reason or for no reason. So what we really need to do is focus on that permission and that capacity we have to, like I said, realign our values with our current knowledge and where we want to go and kind of, map out this trajectory from here to there. And we're going to have to sit with this guilt. When we have a long dieting history, as most of you probably do, as I did, we have to sit with that guilt and there's my dogs barking. I forgot to put them inside. Sorry about that. We need to really be comfortable addressing those feelings and seeing the change we want to make. How do we want our life to look like? What do we feel like in that future version of ourselves that we're trying to get to? What does health really mean? Not what somebody else tells you it means, what you really think health means. What's your reason for pursuing that, and what actionable things will get you there? All right. And weight loss is not on the list. What is the common ground in your relationships and your support system? Is there something there besides dieting? Can we lean into those other things? Or do we have relationships that are just strictly built on diet culture, and maybe those need to be dismissed? So the solutions are found in this curiosity and sitting in the guilt, sitting in the, sort of psychological unrest, and deciding where we want to go. So the long and short of it is that I want you to know feeling guilty, being in diet culture, becoming aware of diet culture, and deciding to leave diet culture is normal and expected. But shame is not required. Shame is not productive. And nothing about your value changes whether you choose to continue in diet culture, choose to live the rest of your life on calorie restricted weight loss diets. That's fine. But if you want to get out, that's great. And this is a curvy road. This is not a straight line, because let me tell you, if it was easy, it would already be done. We wouldn't be having this conversation. If there was one easy, very clear path, we would have all already taken it. You can just bet your bottom dollar that is true. So it's going to take a little bit of deliberate action and thought and, sort of motivation to make this transition. But I'm here to help you navigate it. That's what I love to do. That is where my heart lies. And this is now where my professional acumen really is I want to help you find your way out. And there's lots of other people that can help you too. This is going to take all sorts of voices and all sorts of people to change this narrative. But you can do this. You are absolutely worth it. I hope that was helpful for you. That was a little bit of deep psychology. But hopefully in 25 minutes, I haven't totally destroyed your your mind. It's really, really important. And I base these conversations based on not only my own experience, but that of, like I said, lots and lots and lots of women who just repeat to me the same things over and over about being stuck and, having difficulty finding their way out. So I appreciate you listening this week. If you enjoy this content or any of my other podcast content, please leave a review on your podcast platform. It furthers this mission greatly by moving the ratings up and making my podcast more visible to others that are searching for this information. And I also want to let you know my group coaching is going to be coming back around for enrollment of a new cohort of coaching clients. We're going to start probably in early to mid-May. If there is a link in the show notes, and you can get right to my website and find the wait list. That is not a committal wait list, but it just gets you on the list to be the first notified when enrollment information does get pushed out and all the dates are set in stone and that sort of thing. But I would love to have you. I really think these ideas and this learning is a great thing to do in community. Because the conversation always is so good. Everybody has a different background, a different lived experience, and really, my coaching clients teach me as much as I teach them. It's a really fun place to be. So I hope you'll consider getting on the wait list for our next go around. Until then, I do appreciate you being here and listening. I hope you continue to move this conversation forward and share this with people you think would benefit. And I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for being here today. If you love what you've learned, follow me on social media at Maggie Landes MD, and you'll never miss a thing. You can also check out my website at maggielandesmd.com and sign up to be part of our community of eaters. Thanks again for stopping by. We'll talk again soon.